Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every person's life when they finally recognize their worth, not because someone else reminded them of it, not because the world applauded them for it, but because they woke up one morning and felt a quiet strength rising inside, the strength of self-respect, self-awareness, and self-value. And from that moment on, one truth becomes clear. Never let anyone think they can treat you the same way they once did and get you back. Self-respect must become the foundation upon which every decision, every boundary, and every relationship in your life rests. When you reach a point where someone has broken your trust, taken your loyalty for granted, or treated your kindness as weakness, something inside you shifts. You begin to realize that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And once that realization settles in, self-respect stops being optional and becomes non-negotiable. There is a quiet but powerful transformation that happens when you decide to honor your worth. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not about proving anything to the world. It's simply a deep internal decision that says, I am done allowing what hurts me to stay in my life. Many people confuse self-respect with pride, but the two are not the same. Pride seeks validation from others. Self-respect demands alignment with your values. Pride is loud, self-respect is steady. Pride needs attention, self-respect needs truth. When you choose self-respect, you are choosing to protect your peace, your emotional well-being, and the future version of yourself. There are moments in life when you give someone your heart, your time, and your loyalty, believing they will handle it with care. And sometimes they don't. They misuse your trust, or they fail to appreciate your presence, or they assume you will always be there no matter how they behave. Maybe they walked away without explanation. Maybe they treated you casually while you treated them seriously. Maybe they hurt you repeatedly, knowing you would forgive them. And for a while, you did because you cared, because you loved, because you hoped things would change. But eventually, something inside you realizes that continuing to accept this behavior is no longer an act of love toward them. It is an act of harm toward yourself. That is the moment self-respect awakens. It tells you that you cannot repeat the same pattern and expect a different outcome. It tells you that people who break your trust don't magically change when they return. They change when you stop giving them access to you. It reminds you that every time you allow someone to mistreat you, you are silently teaching them how to treat you again. And so you decide to step back, draw the line, and choose yourself. Not because you are bitter, but because you finally understand that you deserve peace more than you deserve pain. Self-respect also means holding yourself accountable. It means acknowledging the role you played when you stayed longer than you should have, tolerated more than you deserved, or ignored red flags out of love or loneliness. But instead of punishing yourself for it, you learn, you grow, you promise yourself that next time you will not ignore the signs. Next time you will listen to your intuition. Next time you will walk away sooner. Self-respect doesn't erase the past, it ensures you don't repeat it. And when you finally rise with this new understanding, you become stronger in ways others cannot comprehend. You no longer beg for clarity, attention, or effort. You no longer wait for someone to value you. You don't chase, you don't beg, and you don't reopen doors that lead to the same pain. People may try to return, assuming you are still the same person they once knew, but they are unaware of who you've become, someone whose standards are higher, whose boundaries are firm, and whose heart is protected by wisdom instead of wishful thinking. And that is why you never let them think they can have you again, because you have chosen yourself, because your self-respect will no longer bend, because your peace matters more than their presence. Growth is one of the most powerful forces in a person's life. And with true growth comes the understanding that you cannot remain attached to the versions of yourself that once tolerated what hurt you. When you rise, when you heal, when you evolve, you naturally shed the habits, mindsets, and relationships that belong to your past. This is why you can never allow someone who once had access to an unhealed, uncertain, or insecure version of you to believe they can have access to who you have become today. Growth demands distance from the things that once held you back. It demands separation from the old version of yourself and from the people who preferred you in that place. Growth is not always beautiful at first. It often starts with discomfort, the discomfort of realizing that the things you once accepted no longer align with the person you are becoming. Maybe you once tolerated disrespect because you didn't know your worth. Maybe you once stayed quiet because you didn't trust your voice. Maybe you allowed certain people to stay in your life because you were afraid of being alone. Growth doesn't judge those moments. It simply refuses to let you remain there. It pulls you forward and whispers, "You were made for more than this." And when you listen, everything begins to shift. As you grow, you begin to set boundaries you once struggled to imagine. You start saying no to things you once said yes to. You start protecting your energy, your heart, and your future with a seriousness that surprises even you. Suddenly, you no longer entertain the same conversations. You no longer fall for the same excuses. And you no longer believe the same lies. You look back at the person you used to be, the one who was confused, hopeful, forgiving beyond measure, and you feel compassion, not shame, because that version of you didn't know what you know now. That version of you trusted too easily and suffered because of it. But they also learned, and those lessons became the foundation of the person you are becoming. People from your past might not understand your transformation. They might try to come back thinking you are still the same. They remember how easy it was to have access to you before. They remember how quickly you forgave, how deeply you loved, how generously you gave. What they don't realize is that growth has changed your language, your standards, and your capacity for tolerance. You are no longer moved by the same promises. You no longer fall for familiar patterns. You've grown past the point where temporary people can disturb your permanent peace. And here is the truth. The new version of you cannot survive in the same environments that broke the old one. Growth requires you to stop returning to the places where you lost yourself. It requires you to close doors that lead back to pain, confusion, or disrespect. It requires you to honor your journey by refusing to shrink back into a version of yourself you've already outgrown. Each time you choose to walk away from someone who once benefited from your unhealed self, you are choosing your future over your past. You are choosing progress over familiarity. You are choosing peace over chaos. This is why you must never let them think they can have you again, not the way they once did, not at the level they once did, and not with the same behavior they once displayed. They may miss the old you, but you do not. The old you allowed things that the new you refuses to accept. The old you explained yourself over and over. The new you protects your peace in silence. The old you tolerated what drained you. The new you chooses what strengthens you. Growth is a journey of becoming, and every step forward demands that you leave something behind. Sometimes what you leave behind is a person. Sometimes it's a pattern. Sometimes it's a version of yourself. But whatever it is, letting go is the price of becoming who you were always meant to be. Lessons are only powerful when they're applied, not when they're merely remembered. Life has a way of teaching us through pain, disappointment, betrayal, and unexpected endings. These experiences are not meant to make us bitter. They are meant to make us wiser. But wisdom only becomes real when you allow those lessons to guide your choices. This is why you must never let someone who hurt you believe they can return to your life as if nothing has changed. The moment you accept repeated behavior, you erase the meaning of the lesson life worked so hard to teach you. Every experience you go through shapes you, but the painful ones shape you the most. When someone shows you their true nature through their actions, their words, their habits, or their disregard, you are supposed to take note. You are supposed to pause, reflect, and make adjustments, not because you want revenge, not because you hate them, but because you owe your future self-protection. You owe yourself the peace that comes from not repeating cycles that wounded you. Pain is not meant to be a revolving door. It is meant to be a boundary line. People often return after they realize what they lost, not because they've changed, but because they missed the access they once had. They remember your softness, your patience, your loyalty, and your willingness to give multiple chances. But if you learned the lesson the first time, you know that granting them access again only leads you right back into the same emotional storm. Lessons are not fully learned when you understand them. They are fully learned when you change how you respond. If the situation forced you to grow, then letting them back in as if nothing happened is a step backward, not forward. It's easy to say you learned something. It's harder to apply it. Application requires courage. It requires walking away even when part of you still cares. It requires closing the door even when you remember the good moments. It requires choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. Many people go through the same heartbreaks repeatedly because they confuse familiarity with destiny. They keep giving chances, hoping the outcome will be different, but forgetting that unresolved patterns always repeat themselves. When someone repeatedly hurts you, it's not an accident, it's a pattern. And patterns do not change until access does. Learning the lesson means accepting the truth. The past cannot be undone, and some people are not meant to follow you into the future. Learning the lesson means understanding that someone's apology does not erase their behavior. It means realizing that someone's return does not guarantee their growth. It means seeing clearly that you cannot rewrite a person's character with your hope. The moment you stop allowing people to re-enter your life with old habits is the moment your healing becomes real. You also learn a lesson about yourself. You learn that you deserve respect. You deserve effort. You deserve clarity. You deserve someone who chooses you with consistency, not convenience. But you can only receive these things when you stop allowing people who take you for granted to reoccupy space they no longer deserve. Holding on to someone who hurt you is like reopening a wound that was finally starting to heal. And you are the one who bleeds, not them. So when someone from your past attempts to return with the same behavior, remember what you endured. Remember how long it took to rebuild yourself. Remember the nights you stayed up questioning your worth. Remember the tears, the confusion, the disappointment. And remember the moment you promised yourself you would never feel that way again. That promise matters. That lesson matters. Your future matters. When life teaches you something, honor it, apply it, live it, and most importantly, make sure your actions clearly communicate that the chapter they belong to is closed permanently. Protecting your peace is one of the most important choices you will ever make in life. It is easy to underestimate the value of inner calm until you experience its absence, the sleepless nights, the anxious thoughts, the emotional turmoil that comes from allowing people or circumstances to disturb your mind. Peace is not merely a luxury, it is a necessity. Without it, you cannot think clearly, act decisively, or grow into the person you are meant to be. That is why protecting it must be a daily commitment, a conscious decision, and a non-negotiable standard in your life. Many of us spend years allowing others to intrude on our mental and emotional space. We tolerate behaviors that drain us because we are afraid of conflict, because we hope people will change, or because we feel obligated to maintain relationships that no longer serve us. We give away our energy freely, expecting nothing in return, and wonder why we feel exhausted, frustrated, or unworthy. Peace is not something that magically happens. It is something that is actively cultivated and fiercely defended. It requires awareness, noticing when someone or something threatens your balance and courage, making the necessary choices to protect yourself. Protecting your peace begins with understanding its value. It begins with recognizing that your emotional and mental health is more important than pleasing others, more important than avoiding confrontation, and more important than clinging to situations that bring turmoil. Once you internalize this, your perspective changes. You no longer endure mistreatment because of habit or hope. You no longer allow toxic behaviors to fester because of familiarity or attachment. You start prioritizing yourself and the sanctity of your own mind over the convenience of keeping someone else comfortable. This does not mean cutting people off indiscriminately or avoiding conflict at all cost. It means discerning where your energy belongs and where it is safe and productive to invest. It means learning to say no to situations that compromise your well-being, even if saying no is uncomfortable. It means setting boundaries that are firm and clear. It means refusing to let people walk into your life with patterns of behavior that have already proven to be harmful. Protecting your peace requires vigilance. It is a practice, not a one-time decision. Every day, you must evaluate your relationships, your commitments, and your environment, and ask whether they support your growth or threaten your stability. People from your past may attempt to return, hoping to regain access to the peace they once disrupted. They may act as if nothing has changed, as if they are entitled to the version of you that tolerated their behavior. But protecting your peace means recognizing that their presence carries risk. It means understanding that your peace is not negotiable and that granting access to someone who once disturbed it is not an act of forgiveness, it is an act of self-sabotage. Protecting your peace requires courage because it often involves walking away from familiarity, from comfort, or from emotional attachments that once felt safe. Ultimately, protecting your peace is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being is paramount. It is a recognition that life is too short to spend it in chaos, confusion, or unnecessary suffering. It is a refusal to allow people, circumstances, or past mistakes to dictate the quality of your inner life. Every boundary you set, every no you assert, every decision to prioritize yourself over someone else's expectations is a brick in the foundation of a life lived in clarity, strength, and calm. When you protect your peace daily, you create an environment where you can thrive. You cultivate space for growth, clarity, and joy. You make it impossible for those who have caused harm to return and disrupt your equilibrium. And in doing so, you not only honor yourself, but you also send a powerful message to the world. Your peace is priceless. Your boundaries are sacred. And your life is no longer available to those who do not respect it. Closure is not something that comes from someone else. It is something you create for yourself. Too often, we wait for apologies, explanations, or signs of remorse from the people who hurt us, believing that their acknowledgement will heal the wounds they caused. But the truth is, closure is not given, it is claimed. It is the decision to no longer let the past dictate your present, the choice to release the hold someone has on your heart, and the act of moving forward with clarity, strength, and self-respect. Waiting for external validation or reconciliation only prolongs your suffering. True closure comes from within. When someone has hurt you, it is natural to want answers. We want to understand why they acted the way they did, why they took advantage of our trust, or why they chose to leave. We want them to recognize our pain and to apologize sincerely. But relying on someone else to grant closure is dangerous because it places your emotional well-being in the hands of someone who has already demonstrated a disregard for it. If you continue to depend on their acknowledgement to feel whole, you are allowing the past to control your present. Closure is not about their accountability. It is about your freedom. Creating closure requires a conscious decision to accept reality as it is, not as you wish it would have been. It means looking at the situation honestly and acknowledging what happened without excuses or justifications. It means recognizing that some people will never understand the full impact of their actions and that their inability to do so does not diminish your pain or your right to heal. Closure comes when you stop waiting for the other person to change or come back and instead take responsibility for your own peace and your own future. Closure also involves forgiving yourself. Often we carry guilt, shame, or self-blame long after someone has hurt us. We replay the events in our minds, wondering what we could have done differently, why we allowed it to happen, or whether we somehow invited the pain. True closure requires you to release yourself from that burden. It means understanding that being hurt does not make you weak, and that trusting someone who proved untrustworthy is part of being human. Forgiving yourself allows you to reclaim your power and prevents the past from defining your identity. Another aspect of closure is creating boundaries that protect you from repeated harm. If someone has hurt you and attempts to return as if nothing has changed, closure requires that you recognize the pattern and refuse to allow it again. You do not need to harbor resentment or animosity. You simply need to honor the lessons learned and protect the life you are building. Closure is an internal decision that your life, your heart, and your peace are not negotiable. It is a recognition that your future is more important than someone else's apology, recognition, or return. Finally, closure allows you to move forward fully without lingering attachments or unhealed wounds. It is the difference between existing in the shadow of someone else's actions and living boldly in your own light. When you claim closure for yourself, you are no longer defined by what others did to you. You are defined by the strength, wisdom, and resilience you cultivated through the experience. You walk forward with confidence, knowing that the past cannot control your choices, distort your perception, or steal your peace. Closure is not passive, it is active. It is a deliberate, conscious, and often difficult process of reclaiming your life from the hands of those who hurt you. It is choosing to release what no longer serves you, forgiving yourself, learning the lessons, and refusing to allow old wounds to reopen. True closure comes when you understand that your future is yours to shape, that your peace is sacred, and that no one has the right to take it from you. By claiming closure for yourself, you become the author of your story and the guardian of your heart. Your worth is not something that can be measured by how many chances you give someone or how often you tolerate behavior that diminishes you. True worth is revealed in the standards you set for yourself and the boundaries you enforce in your life. The moment you stop allowing repeated mistreatment, manipulation, or disrespect, you begin to communicate your value first to yourself and then to the world. Every time you choose not to return to someone who has harmed you, every time you refuse to accept behavior that drains your energy, you are reinforcing the truth that you are not disposable, you are not replaceable, and you deserve respect. Too often, people confuse kindness with weakness. They believe that being patient, forgiving, or generous makes them less valuable. In reality, it is the opposite. When you continue to give your heart, time, or trust to someone who is already proven unworthy, you inadvertently devalue yourself. You signal that your peace, your dignity, and your emotional well-being are negotiable. Your worth is not diminished by being firm, it is elevated. The moment you recognize that you deserve better, you set a new standard for how others can engage with you. That standard protects your heart and honors the lessons you've learned from past experiences. Recognizing your worth also means understanding that some people will never appreciate it. They may attempt to return, assuming that the version of you they once knew is still available. They may expect forgiveness without change, attention without effort, or access without accountability. But your worth demands more than what they're capable of giving. It requires that you refuse to allow their assumptions to dictate your decisions. It requires that you rise above old patterns and refuse to repeat cycles that previously caused pain. When you prioritize your worth, you no longer tolerate behaviors that compromise your peace or your growth. Self-worth is strengthened through action, not words. It is one thing to say you are valuable. It is another to enforce it through your choices. When someone from your past attempts to re-enter your life with the same energy, the same disregard, or the same inconsistency, your response must reflect your growth. Saying no, walking away, or declining access to people who previously caused harm is a declaration of your worth in action. It tells the world and more importantly, yourself, that you will not be diminished again. It demonstrates that your value is intrinsic, not contingent on someone else's recognition or approval. Your worth also extends to the way you treat yourself. It is reflected in the time you dedicate to self-care, the decisions you make to protect your emotional health, and the people you allow into your life. By valuing yourself, you create a life where peace, respect, and love are not optional. They are non-negotiable. You no longer compromise your standards for convenience, familiarity, or fear of being alone. You recognize that your happiness is not a reward for others' approval, but a reflection of your own self-respect. Moreover, understanding your worth gives you the courage to let go of the past completely. You no longer allow someone who hurt you to linger in your thoughts or manipulate your emotions. You no longer chase validation from those who failed to recognize your value. Instead, you focus on the relationships, opportunities, and experiences that honor who you are today. Every step you take away from repeated mistreatment is a step toward reinforcing the truth that your worth cannot be negotiated. In essence, your worth increases the moment you refuse to accept repeated harm. It increases the moment you choose peace over pain, standards over compromise, and yourself over someone who does not deserve your attention. By refusing to let them have you again, you are not acting out of anger, bitterness, or revenge. You are acting out of recognition of your value, your dignity, and your right to a life where respect is the minimum standard. This is the ultimate declaration of self-worth, a declaration that you are not available to anyone who does not see your value, and that your life will no longer be defined by those who failed to honor it.